Hello, everyone. This is the OLM Upstream Working Group meeting. Today's date is July 14th, 2022, and we're going to kick things off. We have one item on the agenda today submitted by Joe, and it's a request to review a PR that's at the default channel based on priority, and there was some ongoing conversation that focused on where some of the def code should exist. So hopefully we can clear that all up in this meeting. So I'm going to open the URL, and then Joe, if you just want to catch everybody up that may not know or may not be tied into this issue as closely as you are.
Sure. Yep. So I think we've kind of talked about this issue a little bit before, as far as the use case where if you're using OC mirror and you're filtering out, say, different minimum and maximum versions, there's a chance that you end up filtering out the, all the bundles for the currently set default channel. So then you have an invalid catalog at that point. So this PR was to add the concept of a priority field to the FBC OLM channel object, so that you could set the default channel in the case where that filtering caused it to be invalid. And I think we, in prior discussions, felt that this was in diff code, and it seemed like a reasonable thing to do. But I guess the question at hand here, first, are we still okay with a concept of using this priority thing in a channel? That's one question. And then the other one is, I think Vu had mentioned like refactoring or moving out this code and putting it only in the OC mirror directory. So I was, before we went and started to do that refactoring activity, I just wanted some, some discussion or confirmation here that that's what we want to do. It's, it's the diff code, and then there was changes to some other, elements in the operator registry in the mod. You can see the changes in this little screenshot here. There's changes to the model and some of the schema things. And I just wanted to understand if we wanted to move everything over into the OC mirror structure, and if that's the case, then we can do that. I just wanted to get some feedback on that.
Okay, great. So I haven't reviewed this PR in depth, but based on the conversation I had with some other members of the team prior to this meeting, it seems like what the path we want to go down is just moving the def command bits out of operator registry and into OC mirror. And then we're hoping to keep the channel priorities in the operator registry. And if anybody on the, in this group has strong opinions, that contradict that guideline, or those guidelines, I'd give you this opportunity to speak out. Otherwise, Joe, I think we should go ahead and do that.
OC mirror is downstream only, right? There's no, is there a need for upstream diff? Actually, I'm probably steering this in the wrong direction.
As far as we know, OC mirror is the only thing that uses this diff code, and I think it was just a matter of convenience to put it in this repo at the time that it was written, because it was written before the OC mirror repo even existed. So yeah, in my opinion, like, this is all just downstream specific, and even for that reason alone, probably doesn't belong in this repo. But because OC mirror is the only consumer of it, that seems like the right place for it to go. Joe, in terms of the model, so I think everything here is like, you can obviously easily move to OC mirror. The properties and stuff, those can just be something that are defined, by OC mirror, and from the FBC side of property, just, some arbitrary type and value, right? So the operator registry code base doesn't need to know what that definition is. The one question I have is, are there any changes in the model that are really seriously required?
I guess I have to, can you bring up the changes in the model code itself? I think it was pretty simple stuff, but
Like model.go is probably the thing to look
yeah,
at.
yeah. So then you're kind of voting, Joe, to move every bit of this PR into OC mirror, right?
Yeah,
If
I
possible.
guess at the end of the day, operator registry shouldn't know that there is this channel priority stuff happening via some other tool. Okay, so that looks reasonable to me, because I think we've already got properties on channels in the declarative config definition. We just didn't propagate those to the model. But this is like that this channel change here, where we're just adding a list of properties. That's totally fine to stay in operator registry,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Just quick question here. Why the model is still on alpha?
This whole directory we put in alpha, mainly
I thought we
because the
removed it.
operator registry repo is V1, and we decided we wanted to keep making breaking changes to anything in this package. So that's the only reason it's called alpha, just because it's like the V0 section of this repo.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let me quickly rehash what I commented on the PR itself, because the idea of moving it to OCMO is my idea. But pretty much this entire PR is my idea, so I'm responsible for it. So yeah, just say one thing for IBM Joe is that I want the entire div code, meaning the entire div code in the alpha directory, including the changes you have here on your own PR, to be on the OC mirror. The reason is we already discussed here already, so I don't need to rehash that. So there will be the new PR on OC mirror will be more than just this that you already know. That's including the div stuff. And I think the only thing that probably to stay here is the model thing. Probably need to stay here. So moving forward, the only thing you vendor from registry, basically pretty much the model and anything cap like FBC related stuff. And anything extra, including the div stuff, will be on the mirror side, because that way it should be from the beginning. And given you only doing this, I think you're probably the best person to just, create another PR on that side and doing all of this. Because funny enough, even if we can marching this PR in registry, you still need to, vendor this thing back to mirror anyway. So may as well just, take an effort to, take the whole thing over to the mirror side, then you can actually continue to make further changes if you wish to do so on the mirrors repo, which is probably a bit easier to deal with compared to registry, given this specific feature is pretty much just for mirror. So that's the reason why I suggested this, moving stuff in the first place. Is that clear?
Yeah, I'm fine either way. I guess I was just, wanted to understand, make sure that we were in concurrence in this group here, because, it seems simple at first. There might be some other bits that, trying to figure out what actually moves, is it just the diff.go? And, I mean, there might be some other I guess we'll have to see what would still need to be vendored into OC Mirror that would remain in operator registry. But I mean, we can start that exercise. I just, like I said, I didn't want to do it till we thought we were.
Yeah, pretty
down the
much
right
will be
path.
yes, so pretty much will be the div stuff, the div.go and div test probably need to move over. Technically speaking, I'm not sure about the div test, but probably all of that. And at Joe, the other Joe, the Red Hat Joe, they said that there are a few things on the model that need to stay behind, and that's fine. You can create a new PR or just reusing this PR for that matter, and strip all of the other div stuff out and to keep the model stuff that needs to stay behind, because the model obviously going to be used for other stuff on registry. It's not unique to div. The div stuff is unique for that specific functionality, but any not the model stuff is the API that we use for the FPC stuff. So keep them there, but any other div related will be over to the mirror, including the original div code.
Yep, that sounds good. I think like we said, the model, really, I think it's just defining the the properties array on that object anyways, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even know if that's strictly required, right? I think the only reason that's in there is probably because the way that diff is written, it does stuff with the model rather than with the FBC. So I think it's fine to add that, but you might be able to take a look at the diff code and have it look at just the FBC without actually converting anything to a model. But I don't know, in my opinion, I wouldn't be opposed to just going ahead and adding a properties field to the model.
Okay, yeah, we can see if we can remove that, because I mean, instead of having to have two PRs that go through here, if we just had one in OC Mirror, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, so whenever you move it over to the mirror side, I and Jennifer, the other maintainer on the other side, will take care of it. So that will not need to get involved with the registry folks anymore. So that will be going from there.
Okay, I guess the only other question, Vu, should that be still considered, or alpha, that structure? We still want to preserve that when we move it to OC Mirror?
Interesting. Good question. Well, technically, we don't need to be using the same terminology alpha, because alpha in the registry term meaning is alpha feature, meaning that it's not supported on the back. In the other side, you probably want to having the name in the package that more relevant. I think div. Technically, I even like the term div, but whatever name that you can think of that relevant to this specific feature, and you can name it that way. It doesn't have to be alpha. You see what I'm saying?
Okay,
alpha
so
is
we won't
the
carry over
indication
the
of the
alpha.
alpha feature. Yeah.
Okay. Yep, that sounds good.
Just one more thing real quick, Joe, IBM Joe.
Yeah.
I have not reviewed your PR fully yet, so that's one thing I need to say disclaimer here. But I'm recall you actually having two ways to deal with the whole sorting channel, because if they are priority, you will sorting that via priority. That's perfectly fine, which is what you're doing in the PR. But I recall you also doing some sorting in a lexicographic order as well when there's no priority. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is, but I'm thinking that maybe that should just be removed and that becomes an error.
Yes,
because I don't know how else to deal with it. Yeah.
I want to keep the same behavior on the mirror side, because the current behavior is if this default channel missing, it will error out, and I would like to reserve that behavior when there's no priority.
Yeah, because there's no good way to sort. I mean, the channel name is not always Semver and all that good stuff, right?
Yes. Just a quick note there. That's all. Thank you.
Yep, got it.
One last thing I would like us to visit is adding a deprecated warning to the OPM diff command, so that people know that there's a new, that we moved it to OC Mirror. This way, pipeline teams will have some warning before they, before we just remove this command and then it stops working in any, like CI infrastructure or any scripted workflows. So I think that as part of moving the mirror over, if we could also just mark this as deprecated, and then maybe at the next major, for the next time we release OPM, it could be a couple of months from now, we can then actually remove it, and we'll have given people enough runway to.
It's that
you know,
good
prepare for
Washington
it.
State ISP.
I think
Are
the
we-
diff command is still under the OPM alpha subcommand.
Correct.
I
So
don't
what
think-
Alex was saying, he just want to add deprecated on that specific alpha div command to basically signal that it's gonna be removed soon. Technically speaking, it's under alpha, as Joe just said that, so we technically can just remove it. But for the sake of, you know, give people a time to be aware of, he wanted to add the deprecated flag there. That should be fine. As soon as we merging the code in the mirror side, then we can begin to do the deprecation on our side. And I think that we will continue keeping the obviously div code in registry until we officially remove it in the next release or something like that, and then we should be fine, right? Any objection to that?
I think
guess-
that's. Go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead.
I think from my perspective, I think the team has historically had a difficult time with tracking deprecations. And given this is an alpha level thing, this might just be increased maintenance burden. That might not be worth the extra complexity.
Yeah,
So
I
rip
personally
the Band-Aid
would
off
prefer-
and see if Hiram's law kicks in.
I think that would be my suggestion. I mean, obviously, we should aim to be empathetic towards clients, right? And no one's a big fan of seeing breaking changes between minor version releases. I just think we may have some rope here. Unless we have a plan of we're explicitly tracking this and we're going to really move it, and we'll have some release notes or something, like Alex was suggesting. Maybe there's a CLI deprecation flag that will, or a warning message. But I'm not a super strong opinion there. I just, that's my opinion, I guess.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
only
so-
concern is that we released this tooling, it's available, people are using it, we don't know how they're using it, and just ripping it out from under them without giving them any time just introduces potential undue burden to those users. Like, at least we can say we tried if we had a deprecation flag and wait like a month or two.
Yeah, I think I just go back to its alpha level software. I mean, I think we have some. I'll stop talking. I'll let others weigh in and see if we can.
Okay, so I think the next step here, just create an issue for this on registry, and then we can decide what will be the method of removing it. If we feel like deprecation flag will be better, then we mention that on the issue, and if it's more like remove it straight up, and then we can mention it there. For now, I think an issue will be fine until we can sort it out, which is the best way to move forward. And on that topic as well, Joe, IBM Joe, I want to make sure the existing div API, not API, div stuff will continue to be exportable on the mirror side, right? So don't make it, private or anything like that. Keep it as it is. You see what
Yeah, I
I'm
was
saying?
just thinking about
Yeah.
that, because if you're gonna deprecate it, you're gonna need to vendor that backend to be able to still run deprecated if all the code moves, right?
Correct. And I just want to clear up one thing real quick here, just so everyone aware of the mirror stuff. Obviously, having some component in there is downstream specific, but it's not only downstream. That's not the intention of repo. You can still using that repo for any another work that you feel appropriate for your upstream work, and you can vendor stuff in if you want it to be the case. So that is not entirely downstream only. So that's why I want the div stuff continue to be exportable on the mirror side for whoever, like Alex mentioned earlier, potentially want to use it in Echo. That's all.
Hey,
Thank you.
Vu, super quick question. Is the OC mirror stuff, is that, does that have releases? Because I know that's been a historic problem with OpenShift repositories is you have to use pseudo versions.
Yeah, it have both. It having upstream release and downstream release, like a typical.
Cool, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so that's why I said that people can use it on upstream matter if they want it to be the case.
Okay,
Okay.
I guess I feel good. I mean, at least we got some direction to go forward here, so we can start working on that.
Okay, and in that case, I'll hand it over to Joe. Joe, or do you want to share the demo via share screen?
Yep, I'll share my screen. Just give me a sec. All right, so we've got the local source stuff that Aki and Dan Sober, I think, added, which is super nice because then you can run plain bundles from your desktop, which I think is going to be pretty beneficial from an operator developer point of view, right? Like you don't have to commit your code and push it to a Git remote, or you don't have to build an image and push it to an image registry. Now you can basically just upload your bundle and have Ruckpack run it. So kind of on the side, I've also been looking at a similar thing, mainly around the fact that like config map. So the way that the existing stuff works is that it uses a config map. And a config map, like as we've all talked about, like if you have a bundle that has a large CRD or multiple large CRDs, like you run into this problem where you can't store that bundle on the cluster inside of an API that is used by etcd. So like if you try to put the entire bundle in a config map and the bundle is 10 meg, it just fails and Kubernetes says like, nope, that's too big. So with that in mind, I built this thing called a binary source, which is basically a few components that put together enable you to run bundles that are arbitrary size, assuming that the bundle uploader service has enough disk space on its node for you to upload it, right? So effectively what happens is there's a Ruckpack CTL client that creates a bundle deployment that says use source type binary. And when that happens, there's another thing that's added to the cluster now called like the uploader service. And it's kind of watching these things and it said like, oh, I see a bundle that exists that is the internal or is the binary type. So I'm gonna start accepting uploads for that. So in the background, then the Ruckpack CTL client sends a post, starts up a kubectl proxy and sends a post request to the upload service, which then accepts the upload, stores it locally, and then populates the bundle status with a content URL that points to basically a web service that it's running, just like the other provisioners are running for hosting content for their bundles. And then when that update happens, then the bundle deployment controller sees that the bundle has been unpacked and then goes and fetches it via its content URL and everything just works. So it's this kind of this nice way of getting content onto the cluster without using an API like a config map. So anyway, I've got all of this working. It's really short once it all is set up. Maybe it'd be helpful to show. Let's see. Right, so now there's this binary manager. That's what I was talking about. And if you look at its ports, let's see if I actually put that in the pod spec. So it's, yeah, so it's running on 8443. There's a web server here that has basically a handler that accepts uploads. And then when something else comes along and gets that same path, then that's kind of the content URL side of things. So let's exercise this. So I call it run, and you give it a bundle deployment name and then a bundle file. So one of the nice things about this is that you can basically exercise both the initial install use case and also the pivoting or upgrade use case by just reusing the same bundle deployment name. So what happens then for that case is it updates the bundle deployment bundle spec to have a new label on the bundle. So then the bundle deployment goes and creates the new bundle, which triggers a new upload, and like kind of things just go from there. And then the bundle provisioner or the bundle deployment provisioner does what it always does when it sees that there's like a new active bundle. So that part is kind of nice. I don't have a demo for that piece of it because I don't have two different tar GZs to use, but let's just see what happens here. So I'll say Prometheus, and then I've got a Prometheus bundle. And that's it, like it already happened. So if I look at, so I've got this Prometheus bundle now, it says it's unpacked. In the status, it says it's successful. The content URL, so the plain provisioner, so what actually happens, I forgot about this part. So what actually happens is the plain provisioner, the plain bundle provisioner fetches the content from the upload service using the one of the source implementations. And then it actually also stores that content in the plain provisioner's storage location, and that's where it hosts the content. Bundle deployment. So that install failed. Let's see why. Oh, I didn't tell it to use a different, let's do this. You can actually pass a provisioner class name. I think it's called. There we go. So now the install succeeded. And you see we've got stuff for Prometheus, right? So pod monitors and Prometheuses and et cetera, et cetera. The last thing we could do is take a look at, see, I can't remember where I stored it, bar cache bundles, right? So you see that the Prometheus bundle is inside the binary managers. It's an empty dir. If we went and deleted that, you'd see that that goes away. So it's actually watching the binary manager, I think, is watching the bundle, and when the bundle gets deleted, then it goes and cleans up its local store. So the uploads are only there as long as the bundles are actually present on the cluster. So in my mind, I think this is probably more of the long-term solution for like the local use case, because it isn't subject to the arbitrary size restriction, or it's not arbitrary, but the etcd size restriction of like 1 to 2 megabytes. So I think this is up as a PR. I think I need to rebase it based on some changes that have happened in the last couple of days, but it all seems to be working, and we probably just need, I probably just need to add a few more tests and add some EDEs for it. And I might be able to make use of some of the local stuff that's already there. So thanks to all the work that others have done paving the way for this kind of thing. That's it.
Yeah, this is really cool. Thanks for sharing it. I did have 2 questions. One, this only handles really the issue where the config map that stores all the resources in the bundle exceeds the etcd size limit, not the individual resource limits, right? So massive CRDs still don't work, obviously. And
right.
And then my other one concern I have about creating a board, it's not like it's an easily remedied concern, mind you. But one concern I have with it is is there a plan to ensure that when Rockpack is released, that it doesn't use config maps anymore, because it could be a bad user experience if in development scenarios they can deploy everything, but as soon as they try and move it into the Rockpack ecosystem, it starts failing to apply because of size constraints on the bundle.
Yeah, so this is probably up for debate, but in my mind, like we need to basically pick, are we going to go the config map route, or are we going to go this route? And I think, to be fair, like there are some pros and cons. Like the config map route, you can actually see and lay eyes on the object that stores the bundle because it's in the config map. With this route, like it's kind of hidden under the hood inside the storage of this binary manager. And so I think probably the logical response to that is, well, the common way and generic way of getting at the contents of the bundles is to use the content URL, which does work. But I think, to answer your question, my suggestion would be that we, choose one of these and fully remove the other, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment. And I think, if the only concern is giving users a way to view this stuff easily, like, that can be remedied, right, with new endpoints that just communicate, what could be installed, like each of these resources in the bundle, right? So there's pretty easy ways to get around that shortcoming with this design. And then what was I had one more question. It might come back to me. I'll let someone else speak for a second though.
Yeah, I just tried to. I thought there a raising hand feature somewhere, and I now had no idea how to do it. So sorry if I jump over the line somebody else. So I think personally think this is good. I like this. And for record about what Joe just said about you can look it up, the config map, and see the contents of it. I think that can go out the window when we're introducing the data compression zip stuff that we do, which has become like set a blob of data that been not zip up, but compressed. So it's not really readable anymore, type of thing. That was our way to fix the side limit problem by compressing it. So nowadays you can't not really seeing it anymore. So now that you hit that behind the server that you have, I don't think it's matter much anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and all of that really, I think that goes back to what I was saying, where the underlying storage is like this abstraction that if you're a bundle consumer, you're not really concerned about. Every provisioner might have its own way of storing stuff. And so like the API for getting at the contents of those bundles is the content URL. And that's like the publicly supported way of doing that. And really the only reason you should be doing anything other than that is if you're a developer, and you're trying to debug something and figure out why the content URL is not working or whatever.
Yeah, technically speaking, because the content itself in the image, and we have the way to know what image that is, so you can technically, pull it down and unpack it yourself to verify whatever you have. So there are a way to do that, so it doesn't need to using this to get the content. So I'm fine with that.
I think that's mostly true, but like in this case with the binary uploader, the only way to know what that is to use the content URL, right? Because unless you can exec into the binary manager's pod and cat it and whatever, right? But in general, the only way that you'd have access to know what's in there is by pulling it from its content URL. And I think there's even some foot guns, even with assuming that you can pull the image. And I think we're pretty good at this because we put in the status like what the SHA digest of the images are. So like theoretically, you can go and pull that SHA digest and be pretty confident that what the cluster says is what is there. But I get a little bit nervous just because like tags can change. And so if we're not careful about being super explicit, it might be possible for us to give the impression that like, yeah, this is your bundle is this tag, but since we actually reconcile this bundle, that tag has changed. So you're going to pull the new version, whereas this bundle is looking at the older version. But again, I don't think that's a major issue because we put the digest of the thing we pulled in the status. The other thing I wanted to call out here is that this bundle upload endpoint is protected via RBAC, just like the bundle. So there's a bundle reader cluster role, I think is what it's called. In this PR, I'm adding a bundle uploader cluster role, which is the same sort of thing. It uses kube RBAC proxy, and it requires the requester to present a service account token or some sort of authentication that the kube RBAC proxy can use to see that you're authorized to upload bundles. So that's nice because then you've got the kind of built-in security around this as well.
Could you quickly highlight how you added that?
Which piece?
Specifically making it so people can't upload bundles if they don't have this bundle uploader role.
Yes. So this role gets applied to the cluster. And then if you look at the deployment, this listens on 8443, and this is the only port that's the service exposes. So any communication to this pod has to go through this secure listen address. Notice down here, we bind only on localhost in the actual binary manager. So like this, you can't connect to this from outside. So this basically listens on 8443, does all the RBAC proxying, and then proxies up to the actual binary manager port. So this kube RBAC proxy is the thing that knows that that put endpoint is protected, and it basically does subject access reviews to say like, hey, does this person have access to that endpoint? Yes or no. If no, then it returns with 401, unauthorized. Otherwise, it proxies it down to the actual service.
Yeah, is that the same thing that the Prometheus metric server uses?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. Okay. Oh, and I had one last question. Are the bundle contents stored on a file system or in memory? I think I saw them on the file system. I just wanted to check.
Yeah, they're file system.
like
So
that.
it uses an empty dir.
Okay, that's great because we've had memory complaints with other stuff we've written before, and this seems like a potential spot where that would be.
Good question here. I have not seen the PR. I have seen code. So I'm not actually know what exactly in the background here. But is it supposed to be watching? Is it specifically for a namespace, or is it going to be a global thing that watching everything?
So the bundle API is a cluster scoped API. So when something creates a bundle, it's creating it's not in a namespace. So this service is watching bundles, which are cluster scoped, and then accepting uploads for them. A, only if they exist, and B, only if the user is authorized.
Okay, so it's a global thing. Is there going to be a performance problem with us?
What do you have in mind?
No, I'm just wondering. That's all. With the fact it's literally watching everything. Not watching everything, but handling everything in the cluster level. To have many of them try to unpacking it at the same time, would that be a problem? I mean, it's just a theoretical thinking I had in my mind, not something that we have to deal with it now.
Only I think it could be a problem if there's some insane number of bundle uploads happening all the time, but that seems unlikely. So this only runs when this is just a web server that's sitting there, and so it's just receiving requests for uploads. It's not actually really watching much of anything. I think it actually does watch bundles, but it only watches for bundle deletion so that it can clean up its disk.
Yeah, is there not this is just get way into the weed area for no reason. I'm sorry for anyone who listens to this and like, what the heck is he talking about? I'm just curious. Then it's gonna watching on the uploading thing. It had no way to detecting that this bundle already exists and already been uploaded, right? Any way to do that, like have a dedupe situation, because the current config map is able to do that.
Yeah, I'd have to go look at the code I wrote, but I'm pretty sure that it blocks. It only accepts uploads for bundles that are not already unpacked.
Okay, then that's good. Okay, right. That was I was asking about. Okay, cool. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
Oh, one quick one. I mean, maybe I'm missing the use case here, but you're using an empty dir. This is not data you want persisted across a reboot or something like that?
Let me think about that. So we kind of talked about this kind of more in general in all of RuckPack. So like the plain provisioner uses an empty dir to store its bundles. The the binary manager uses an empty dir to store its bundles. In this particular case, you'd have to delete the binary manager pod and the plain provisioner pod to lose access to the binary type bundles. I think the reason that we're using empty dir right now is just because like it's pretty much guaranteed to work on every single cluster. Whereas if we used persistent volumes, like every cluster has different storage classes, and some clusters like don't have a very good UX with persistent volumes. So at least for now, we've said like, okay, the upstream distribution just uses empty dir everywhere. And for the most part, that works. Like for image stuff, like if you kill the plain provisioner, the image, like the unpacked image pods are still sitting on the cluster. So you could then like you start up the plain provisioner, it goes and reads those and repopulates its empty dir. If you delete the unpacked pod, then the cluster is going to go and try to re-pull it. And generally that works. The one problem would be if the tag moved, right? Then you'd get a new version of that thing, and that might cause some problems. So it's definitely a little bit of a rough edge that we'll have to probably think about a little bit. And maybe in like, in a downstream context, maybe we would sub out the empty dirs for persistent volumes to make it more robust. We just haven't really gotten to that point yet.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
In defense of what Joe is doing now with this bundle content, practically temporary until, temporary and essentially useless after it's been applied to the cluster. I think this is pretty much why empty does I feel like it's the perfect way to do this. You don't need to keep it persistent for any reason. After it's, fulfill with requirement, not with purpose. So I don't see the reason to make it persistent. It's not like you're gonna saving that to do anything later. Technically speaking, you can literally upload it again and had no concept of like if this bundle had already been uploaded before or anything like that. But for the sake of performance, maybe we should do that. But I don't see the purpose of having a persistent storage here. Just my opinion anyway, but that's all.
Yeah, well, as someone who's seeing this for the first time, I think this is really, really great work to everybody who was involved, and it's a pretty cool demo to see. And I really like the cube RBAC side container that you used to limit who could upload bundles. So great work, guys, and everyone. Cool. Well, unless there's anything else we want to discuss, I think we can bring the meeting to a close. Anyone? Okay. Well, then on that note, thank you for being a part of our community, and we will see you all next week.